Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mormon Atheist. So today is November 24th, 2025. Okay, apostate congregation, I have a confession to make. Earlier today, I made a video, this same exact video, right, that I'm going to bring to you today, right now, and I got my facts wrong. So the backstory is a commenter commented about the story of Joseph Smith meeting Thurlow Weed and printing the Book of Mormon. Okay. So I legitimately have never heard of this story before. Okay. I know quite a lot about Thurlow Weed, and I've never heard this story. So in the process of this, he's commenting, telling me the story. I'm fact checking, Googling, because I've never heard of this before, right? So I'm Googling and I'm looking, and as we do on this channel, we go to the very earliest edition of these books that we can find, right? So the one that I found was 1915, okay? And that is the video that I made. Everything else stands except for the quotes from the book and the date, okay? Which is like the entire video. That's what the whole video is even based on. So I was wrong. And so after I made the video, the commenter commented. And I don't know if he was being aggressive, but I sort of took it that way. And I was like scratching my head like, well, wait a minute, And so I checked it again. And it immediately comes up as 1885. And I was like, what in the F just happened? Because I legit spent all day. I spent all day on this thing. Okay. The commenter himself knows, I spent all day doing this stupid thing, right? Everything else stands except for the Ellen Dickinson book part. Okay. Nonetheless, I was wrong. And so immediately, immediately I took that shit down. I was like, there is no way no way is this going to happen, right? So I owe a massive thank you and an apology to the commenter, okay? Because this is the total fact check channel, 100%. And I can be wrong. Hey, I can be wrong too, right? And so that was absolutely my mistake. I was wrong. I apologize, but at the same time, I thank you because it was pretty much immediate. You commented like within minutes of that finishing, and I think only like a couple of people saw the video, and so I was like, that's got to go. So I deleted the video. The video is no longer there. So let's continue on with the presentation. Now I've got the real quotes from the 1885 edition. Okay. And commenter, please hold my feet to the fire, man. But keep in mind, commenter, if you're watching right now, I do not keep my comments on because the comments are extremely distracting. So I can't see you if you comment or anything like that. So if, after the video is over, please feel free to comment. All right. So with that being said, I got to drink my electrolyte water, and let's get going. All right. So we are doing a complete redo of a video that I just got done doing about an hour ago. Okay. So let's get into it. Today, apostate congregation, we are going to jump into the time machine and make a couple of stops. Okay. We are going to tune into some old books, We are going to turn on to some Thurlow Weed and some Ellen Dickinson 1885 edition. And we're going to drop out of society for a minute, apostate congregation. And we are going to get into the time machine, and we are going back to the early 1800s and 1885. All right. So the curious and historical facts surrounding Thurlow Weed and Joseph Smith is what this presentation is going to be about. Okay. So there's a story that they meet each other, and Thurlow Weed Joseph Smith goes and asks Thurlow Weed to print the Book of Mormon. Okay. So this story is in Ellen Dickinson's book. Okay. The only place in history that this is not a letter. Okay. We're not even going to talk about the last video. We're not even going to mention it from here on out. All right. It's a stain. Okay, so the historical facts surrounding Thurlow Weed and Joseph Smith. So today we are taking another walk through the streets of history, congregation. We are going to explore the layers of print, politics, and religious controversy, all while keeping our eyes critically on the sources. All right. That's a very important word, critically on the sources. Okay. Before we begin, though, like and subscribe to the channel, hit the button so you can be notified when I come on, because I come on at random times, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so we're going to start by setting the stage, congregation. We are talking about people that have to do with the anti-Masonic movement and Mormonism, right? So we're in this like crossover phase, okay? So in the early 19th century, America, right, this was a time of intense political evolution and social reform movements. Among these movements was the anti-Masonic movement. This is emerging as a significant force at the time, right? Critiquing what many perceived as undue influence of secret societies in American civic life. Central figures in this movement are Thurlow Weed, Solomon Southwick, David Bernard, and W.W. Phelps. That's a Mormon name right there, W.W. Phelps. So who is Thurlow Weed? Okay, he was born in 1797 in Cairo, New York. He became a prominent newspaper publisher and political advisor. Okay, influential in shaping early American politics. Weed's work in journalism and politics positioned him at the forefront of the reform movements. This guy is huge. His writings are he has so many writings, but they're all newspapers. They're all newspapers and they're all anti-Masonic. And he has one book. That's it, one book. Okay. Those books are in 2 volumes. 1883 is volume 1, and 1884 is volume 2, right? Never once does he ever mention Joseph Smith or Mormonism, ever, in any of his writings, ever. It's never mentioned. Okay. So he was particularly heavily in the anti-Masonic movement, which he sought to expose the secretive workings of Masonic lodges and their influence over civic institutions. Okay, so that's a little bit about Thurlow Weed. All right, so let's get into the anti-Masonic context. Okay, we're not going to get deep into this, but we're just going to touch base on it, right? So to understand the context in which Joseph Smith and early Mormonism later became embroiled in controversy, it's crucial to examine the anti-Masonic literature of its era, right? Solomon Southwick, one of my personal heroes, okay? Solomon Southwick is the creator of the anti-Masonic movement. And way back in the day, Thurlow Weed was one of Southwick's apprentices, okay? So there's connections all through this stuff, all right? So Solomon Southwick, in his work, repeatedly warns against the secret religious societies known as the Masons, okay? He writes in A Solemn Warning Against Freemasonry, okay? This is this book here. Now, depending on the publication and your page numbers may be different, all of that kind of stuff, but the writing is the same though. So, yeah, the writing is the same. All right. So, anyways, let's get going. Solomon Southwick writes, "We have thus laid before the public the operations of the Church of Masonry as a secret religious institution which under the name of charity and benevolence wields a moral influence over the conscience of its members and thereby over the public at large." That's on page 45 of A Solemn Warning Against Freemasonry. And later on page 67, he writes again, "The religious institution of Masonry, though cloaked in the garb of patriotism and piety, conceals in its true designs an attempt to govern the conscience of men in secret." It's pretty powerful. The entire anti-Masonic movement is about a religious institution of Masonry. It's a warning against a religious institution of Masonry. That's what the entire anti-Masonic movement is about. That's what everything, I don't want to say everything. Most everything he writes, Solomon Southwick, is about the movement. And David Bernard, this book, I do quite a few videos on this book. This book will take you places. If you listen to it with an LDS ear, read these anti-Masonic literature with an LDS ear. That's the key. That is the Masonic key, okay? So later on page 67, Solomon Southwick writes again, "The religious institution of Masonry, though cloaked in the garb of patriotism and piety, conceals in its true designs and attempts to govern the conscience of men in secret." David Bernard, okay, so Solomon Southwick is writing in 1827. David Bernard is writing in 1829, okay? On page 21, on Light on Masonry, David Bernard writes, "The Church of Masonry as a religious organization exercises over its members a spiritual dominion, claiming obedience in matters which ought to remain free and voluntary." On page 134, he reiterates, "It is evident that the religious institution called Masonry," now in context, we are speaking about speculative Freemasonry. You must know the difference between operative and speculative, okay? These books, 100% are all, it says it right on the cover. These books 100% are talking about speculative Freemasonry. So in context, when they are talking about this religious institution of Masonry, they very much are talking about speculative Freemasonry. Operative Masonry is dead. This new thing called speculative Freemasonry is a religious institution of Masonry. That's what these books are all about. That's what the entire anti-Masonic movement is all about. Okay? It's profound. Relate this to Mormonism. If you think about this in a Mormon lens, the entire anti-Masonic movement, think about this historically. The anti-Masonic movement never stopped. It never stopped. Historically speaking, it never stopped. It slowed down, but it never stopped. And then all of a sudden, this anti-Mormon movement kicks up, right? And it's the same thing, the religious institution of Masonry. These people are talking about this. The anti-Masonic movement was an entire political party, man, was created against the Mormon church. Do you understand that? Does that correlate? A religious institution of Masonry. Okay. Mormons out there, you all know this. You all know that all of our oaths and ceremonies, the Masonic element in Mormonism, you can't deny this stuff. And when they literally are naming Mormon founders in an anti-Masonic book, the kidnappers of William Morgan are all Mormon founders. Put the stuff together, apostates. Okay. And to do, okay, so I want to reread Bernard's, on page 34, on page 134, he reiterates, it is evident that the religious institution called Masonry, in context, we're talking about speculative Masonry, okay, seeks to influence men's moral and spiritual choices under the geist of fraternity, and to do so without public accountability. Okay? I mean, think of the church, apostates. Okay. All right, so W.W. Phelps, what does he have to say? W.W. Phelps was also instrumental as a conductor of leading anti-Masonic papers. Okay? Further propagating the critique of the Church of Masonry. W.W. Phelps was a huge critic of the Church of Masonry. And think of the Mormon story of W.W. Phelps, apostates. So W.W. Phelps further is propagating the critique of the Church of Masonry as a secret religious institution that sought influence over public and moral life. Okay. Now, let's get into the connection. Okay. Now that we've set the stage a little bit, we introduced you to the who Thurlow Weed was, right? We got you into the anti-Masonic movement. Okay. Give you a little bit of background. Now let's get into the connection. Ellen E. Dickinson. Okay. Commenter, we're not even going to mention anything. We're just going to move on, all right? Like it never happened. Okay, Ellen E. Dickinson. Now to the connection. Moving forward, we encounter the work of Ellen E. Dickinson and her book, New Light on Mormonism, published in 1885. This book provides the only source, the only narrative connecting Thurlow Weed to Joseph Smith, period. Hands down, that's it. That's it. Thurlow Weed died in 1882. His son published his autobiography in 1883 and 1884. Okay, then later his daughter does another one. Now these are called facsimils. Okay, so anything after the first print of Thurlow Weed's book is referred to as a facsimile. Okay, so I had to look I already know what that word means and what it is, but I wanted to know how to pronounce that word, okay? Because everybody says it different, you know. So how do you pronounce that word, right? So I looked it up. Uh, it's pronounced fake similar, okay? And it's a Latin root word, right? So it literally means fake but similar, right? So it's not the real, you know, it is a fake, but it sure does look real similar to the real thing. So it's a facsimile, a fake but similar, facsimile. Okay. All right. So that's important because we have a lot of facsimiles in Mormonism, don't we? Right. Okay. So let's get into her book. This is the only narrative ever, okay, connecting Thurlow Weed to Joseph Smith is this book. Okay. So Dickinson writes in her book, purportedly from Weed, which claims that Joseph Smith approached Weed to print the Book of Mormon. Okay, so this is going to be on page 60, chapter 2 of the 1885 edition. Okay, she writes, Mr. Thurlow Weed, then editor of the Anti-Masonic Inquirer in Rochester, had already refused to do Smith's printing in 1829. Okay, this this forms the core of the story of the Mormon apologetics, right? Okay, that they reference. Okay, as Weed himself. Okay, as if Weed himself had provided firsthand testimony, right? Though no such correspondence exists outside of Dickinson's book, right? This never happened. Okay, so she continues, right? There's more. If you go to the appendix in her book on page 260 and 261, okay, this gets interesting because I'm actually glad this happened. Okay, I'm actually glad this happened because this plays into my "Is Joseph Smith a Real Person" videos, right? Okay, so this is the only source, all right, and then um, she continues, right, on page 260 and 261 in the appendix of the 1885 edition. It says Smith renewed his request that I should print his book. Okay, now this is Thurlow Weed talking. Supposedly, this is Thurlow Weed talking to somebody. Smith renewed his request that I should print his book, adding that it was divine revelation. Now, apostates, I want you to pay attention to these words. Listen to the way that this is written. Okay, it's very affirmative, right? But there's key words in here. Okay, so listen to this, right? You know, very Mormon-esque, right? Always adding the divine, right? Always adding the, you know, always adding that layer, right? Okay, so adding that it was divine revelation, there's a layer, and that he would be accepted by the world as the prophet. Does that sound Joseph-esque? Or whoever, you know, very Joseph-esque, right? It was plain to me that he possessed considerable cunning. I had discovered Smith was a shrewd, scheming fellow, and while pretending to be simple and arrogant, okay, I mean, listen to this, right? This is so Book of Mormon stuff, right? He seemed about 30 years old. Oh, wait. Uh, so he was a shrewd, scheming fellow, And while pretending to be simple and arrogant, he was really quick and intelligent. He seemed about 30 years of age, was compactly built, about 5 feet 8 inches in height, uh, and of dark complexion. His expression indicated self-confidence, mingled with impudence and boldness. I declined to undertake the printing and advised him to seek someone else. Okay, so we know this never happened. Okay, so 100% a church member wrote this, right? Absolutely, right? So, I mean, you can tell it's in the wording. It's literally in the language, right? We talk about the language on this channel, right? The lingua of the day, right? We talk about that all the time, right? And then listen to his description of Joseph, right? Okay. He possessed considerable cunning. I had discovered Smith was a shrewd, scheming fellow, and while pretending to be simple and arrogant, he was really quick, intelligent. He seemed about 30 years of age, was compactly built, about 5 feet 8 inches in height, and of dark complexion. His expression indicated self-confidence mingled with impudence and boldness. Okay. What have we learned about Joseph Smith and his descriptions? Okay. Nobody can say the particulars. Nobody knows the particulars of Joseph Smith. These are not particulars. These are very vague, general. Like this would not like impact. The particulars are like his character, right? How was the guy, right? This is not that. This would leave no lasting impression on you if you met the guy. That's the particulars that H. Bancroft, Fraser's Magazine, Pomeroy Tucker, all of these people, right? That's what they're talking about. Is nobody can describe Joseph Smith. Now, you got to remember, this is in 1885. These books that I'm talking about, well, Bancroft is in 89, okay? Those other books are in the 1840s, okay? And nobody can describe the particulars. Fraser's Magazine is in 1873, okay? Nobody can describe the particulars. These are the kind of generalities that we get right here. There is no physical description of Joseph Smith until 1997, apostates. I put that in my community chats. You can go check that, okay? And the author's book or the paper that it came in, all that stuff is all there, okay? 1997 was the first physical description of Joseph Smith, okay? So this is in Ellen Dickinson's book, okay? So who is Ellen Dickinson? Ellen Dickinson, okay, I have searched and searched, and everything that I keep searching myself, remember, Oliver Cowdery comes up as her grandfather. Now the commenter is saying that it's somebody else. Her grandfather is somebody else, and I don't know because I got whacked once already, and I had to delete my video, and I was dead set that I was right. I was dead set that I was right, and I turned out to be wrong. Okay. So everything that I could find on her grandfather is Oliver Cowdery. And she was never a member of the church. She she was a sympathizer, right? So she wasn't for the church or against the church, but she leaned towards, she was sympathetic to the church, right? So that's everything that I could find on her. you know, so that was my mistake. That was the end of my mistake that I could find, was I got the page numbers wrong. I got the entire book wrong. Uh, the edition was the 1885 edition. Okay. And, or I mean, I'm sorry. The edition was the 1915 edition is what and I did go back, and in that edition, the stuff that I said literally is in that book. So even though I was wrong, I I wasn't wrong. Those quotes, commenter, in that previous video that I said are legitimately in that 1915 edition book. Okay. So hands down, I admit. Okay. And so let's continue. This, uh, remember, this is the only source in her book that connects Joseph Smith and Thurlow Weed, right? This is it. This is it. There's nothing else. Okay. In this narrative, Thurlow's own writings including his 1883 biography, contain no mention of Joseph Smith or Mormonism, period. That's it, hands down. There's no mention. So the apologetic angle over time, okay, Mormon apologetics have cited Dickinson's claims as if Weed himself had written about Joseph Smith, right? The argument often presented is Weed had first-hand knowledge of Joseph Smith's and attempted to solicit printing the Book of Mormon. This never happened. In history, this legit never happened, okay? And this is another book that we can take and we can add to our collection of apostate congregations of books that are just straight fabricated. These stories never happened. In a historical speaking level, this stuff never happened. And then the church takes it and just kind of runs with it and promotes it as faithful arguments, you know? And it's really disgusting, you know? It's really disgusting, right? So the argument that the apologetics often present is Weed had first-hand knowledge of Joseph Smith and attempts to solicit the printing of the Book of Mormon, creating the illusion of direct historical corroboration. It's an illusion. It never happened. Okay. However, as we have discovered, no primary source from Weed himself ever mentions Joseph Smith or Mormonism. I mean, this guy has so much writings, right? And he never mentions it. Okay. Now, this story gets put in later editions of Thurlow Weed's books. Okay. The facsimils. And it is printed as what I just read right there. Okay. Weed has firsthand knowledge of Joseph Smith and attempts to solicit the printing of the Book of Mormon. This story is in later editions. It's not in the original edition. If your original Thurlow Weed book is not a H. Holt and Company New York edition, it's not a legitimate book. So if you have a Thurlow Weed autobiography and it mentions anything about Joseph Smith or Mormonism at all in that book, it's a facsimile. It's a reprint. It's not the original edition. Okay. So even though my dates were wrong for Ellen Dickinson's book, everything else still stands, commenter. This never happened. Okay. And in Thurlow Weed's book, there is no mention of Joseph Smith or Mormonism of any kind. in his first edition. Okay, 1883, 1884, Volume 1, Volume 2. Okay, that is the H. Holt and Company New York edition, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Anything after that is what is called a facsimile. Even his own daughter's reprint of the book is still called a facsimile. It's fake, but similar. It's not the same. Okay. Now, one thing that you can do is you can take these books and you can read them side by side. I personally have done that with quite a few of these books I talk about on my channel. And you can legitimately see where the things are changed. ChatGPT will do the same thing. But I like to go on, I like to really dive deep. And I got stung on this one. Hands down, I got stung, but that also proves my point as to why it is so important to pay attention. Pay attention to these dates, apostate congregation, because these books legitimately are different. Okay? I just did an entire episode on a reprint of this book by Ellen Dickinson. Okay? And I had deleted the video because I was wrong. The dates weren't right. And so therefore, I was quoting the wrong book. But what I was quoting is legitimately in that book, that version, that edition of that book. So do you see? Like, it even happens to me, as careful as I am on this channel, it even happens to me. So please, apostate congregation, pay attention to these dates, okay? And I freely, at 100% admittedly admit that I was wrong, because I was wrong. What kind of a schmuck would buckle down and say, hey, I wasn't wrong? No, I legit was wrong. And the commenter caught me. Thank you, commenter, for that. Right? You guys, I can't express to you enough how beautiful the congregation is. You guys are like this just incredible, cool family that, nobody's hating on each other, nobody's getting mad, nobody's, you know what I'm saying? It's just, everybody's just cool. You guys are just cool on this channel. Okay? Apostate congregation, that's all I have for you tonight. I got a little egg on my face. Okay, I'm gonna go and try to get rid of it. Hopefully this video works. Commenter after the video, please comment and let me know if I got it right this time, man. So let me know. Thank you. And everybody, remember, in the words of the late great Solomon Southwick, that's me. Sorry. In the words of the late great Solomon Southwick, the ashes of Morgan will rise again. And congregation, with your help, the ashes of Morgan are rising. They are rising. And here we are. Here we are, congregation. So like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Remember, this channel will never be monetized. We are not monetized. This channel will never be monetized. So like and subscribe. The only way that you can help and support the Mormon Atheist is to like, subscribe, share the videos, hit the bell so you know when I'm coming on, and read these books. The number one thing you could possibly do to support me is to just read these books and tell a friend about the book. That's it. That's all I'm asking. The subscribing and liking, that helps all of my algorithms. Plus, it just lets me know if you like this stuff. I mean, nobody ever comments. Nobody ever comments. And the comments that I get are so incredibly effing dumb from Mormon people that I can't stand it. So please, apostates, comment, recommend books, tell me you like the video, tell me I suck. Tell me, I don't know. Have you ever seen Good Morning Vietnam? When he's like, sir, I don't know what this means, but it can't be good. And he's like, what does it say? Well, sir, it says, you suck, eat a bag of shit. Love it. You suck, eat a bag of shit. I don't know what this means, sir, but it can't be good. Okay, thank you, congregation. I will see you on the other side.